It was late at night outside Jerusalem. The city had grown quiet, and the moon shone softly over the hills. Jesus had just finished the Passover meal with his disciples. They had eaten together, spoken together, and sung a hymn together. But Jesus knew that this night would change everything. After leaving the city, he walked with his disciples across the small brook Kidron and toward a familiar place called Gethsemane. This garden, filled with ancient olive trees, was a place where Jesus often went to pray. But on this night, the atmosphere felt different. The air felt heavy, the silence felt deep. Jesus knew that the hour of his suffering had come. He had already warned his disciples that one of them would betray him. He had also told them that they would soon be scattered in fear. The disciples did not fully understand his words. They still hoped that Jesus would soon establish a powerful kingdom on earth. But Jesus knew the truth. He knew that betrayal, suffering, and the cross were now very near. Yet the greatest burden before him was not the physical pain. The greatest burden was the weight of the sins of the entire world. Every lie, every act of cruelty, every hidden sin in the hearts of human beings. All of it would soon be placed upon him. When they arrived at the garden, Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "Sit here while I go and pray." Then he took 3 disciples deeper into the garden. These 3 were Peter, James, and John. They had been with him during some of the most important moments of his ministry. They had seen his glory on the mountain. They had seen his miracles. But now they would witness something different. As they walked among the olive trees, the disciples noticed that Jesus became deeply troubled. His face showed sorrow. His steps became slow. Then he spoke words that shocked them. "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Stay here and watch with me." The inspiration says that the sorrow of the Son of God was beyond human understanding. It says that the sins of the world were pressing upon him, and the sense of God's wrath against sin was crushing his life out. Leaving the 3 disciples behind, Jesus walked a little farther into the darkness of the garden. Then he fell on his face upon the ground and began to pray. His voice was filled with deep anguish. "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." The cup Jesus spoke about was the cup of suffering. It represented the guilt of the world. It represented the terrible consequences of sin. The inspiration says that Christ was now standing in the place of sinful humanity. He felt the guilt of every sinner as though it were his own. For all eternity Jesus had lived in perfect unity with his Father. But now, as the bearer of sin, he began to feel the terrible separation that sin causes. This struggle was so intense that his body began to react. The Bible tells us that his sweat became like great drops of blood falling to the ground. This condition can happen under extreme emotional stress. Tiny blood vessels near the skin break, and blood mixes with sweat. It shows how intense the suffering of Jesus truly was. The inspiration says that Satan was now pressing his temptations upon Christ with terrible force. The enemy suggested that the sacrifice was too great. He suggested that humanity was not worth such suffering. He whispered that the world would reject him anyway. But Jesus continued praying. The burden of sin pressed upon him like a mountain. The inspiration says that Christ feared that sin was so offensive to God that their separation might become eternal. Yet even in this terrible struggle, Jesus chose to trust his Father. After some time, Jesus rose and returned to his disciples. Perhaps he hoped to find them praying. Perhaps he longed for human comfort in this dark hour. But when he reached them, he found them sleeping. Peter was asleep. James was asleep. John was asleep. The disciples who had promised to remain faithful could not stay awake. Jesus gently woke Peter and said, "Could you not watch with me 1 hour?" Then he warned them, "Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." The inspiration says that the disciples did not understand the importance of the hour. If they had watched and prayed with Christ, they would have received strength for the coming trial. But they slept while the greatest battle in history was being fought only a short distance away. Jesus then returned to pray again. Once more he knelt upon the ground. Again his voice rose in prayer. Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done. This prayer showed his complete surrender. The struggle was moving toward victory. The inspiration says that the human heart of Christ shrank from the suffering before him, yet his love for humanity was stronger than the fear of pain. While Jesus prayed, the disciples again fell asleep. They did not realize that the destiny of humanity was hanging in the balance. Jesus was alone in the darkness of the garden. The night seemed very long. The silence of the olive trees surrounded him. At that moment, heaven sent help. The Bible tells us that an angel appeared to strengthen him. The inspiration says that this angel came from the presence of God to encourage the suffering Son of God. He reminded Jesus that his sacrifice would save millions. He reminded him that his suffering would open the way of salvation. He reminded him that through his sacrifice, humanity could be restored. Strengthened by this message, Jesus found new courage. He prayed a third time. Now his decision was firm. The struggle was over. The victory had already been won through prayer. The inspiration says that Christ had accepted the baptism of blood. He had chosen to give his life for the world. When Jesus returned to the disciples again, they were still sleeping. But this time his voice was calm and resolute. Are you still sleeping and resting? The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Then he said, Rise, let us go. My betrayer is near. Soon the quiet garden was disturbed by the sound of many footsteps. Torches appeared among the trees. A group of soldiers and religious leaders entered the garden. At the front of the crowd was Judas, one of the 12 disciples. One who had walked with Jesus for 3 years. One who had heard his teachings and witnessed his miracles. But now he had come to betray him. Judas approached Jesus and greeted him with a kiss. This was the signal he had arranged with the soldiers. Jesus looked at him with sorrow and said, Friend, why have you come? The inspiration says that even in this moment of betrayal, the heart of Jesus was filled with compassion. He still loved the disciple who was betraying him. Soon the soldiers stepped forward and arrested Jesus. The disciples were afraid and fled into the night. The trials, the beatings, and the cross would soon follow. But the most important battle had already taken place. It happened in the Garden of Gethsemane. It was there that Jesus chose to surrender completely to the will of his Father. The inspiration says that the destiny of the human race was trembling in the balance. Christ could have refused to drink the bitter cup. But he chose to save humanity. The story of Gethsemane reveals the depth of God's love. Before Jesus died on the cross, he first faced the agony of the garden. Every prayer he prayed. Every tear he shed. Every drop of sweat like blood. All of it was for humanity. All of it was for us. In that dark garden, love chose sacrifice. And because of that sacrifice, the door of salvation was opened for the entire world.